Everybody. My name is Nick Robinson. I'm one of the co-founders of ELT Jam. Do we have any ELT Jam blog readers in the room? Wow. Thank you very much, first of all. I mentioned this at our little party we did last night, but the blog is 3 years old at this IATEFL, so that's 3 years we've spent writing about the world of technology and English language teaching. And what I'd like to talk about today is a topic that I personally am fascinated by, that I hope you will be as well, the idea of design and the idea of what we might learn from how user experience design happens and how we might apply that to learning or learning design. And I want to start by unpicking this idea of user experience. And it's a term some of you may know from the digital world. I thought I might start with a more analog or a hybrid example that a few of you, especially if you live in the United Kingdom, might recognise. So just put your hands up if you recognise one of these. Yeah, listen to that. Oh, it's big. This device, this self-service checkout machine, is for me right now the epitome of a bad user experience. Everything about this makes my blood boil. I've got to the point now where this one's taken in Tesco. I will literally avoid going into Tesco to avoid having to use one of these machines. They have lost me as a customer for how bad the experience of using this machine is. Nothing about this works well. I've got this really confusing messaging, self-service checkout, scan your item, or touch start to begin. Or which is it? What shall I do? Why are both options there? Why doesn't it not just start when I start scanning? You start scanning. You can't figure out whether you put your items on that side or this side. You've then got unidentified objects in the bagging area. And that message starts like repeating like this horrible mantra. And literally by the end, the worst thing for me possible, by the end, the payment, it says finish and pay. I press finish and pay. And then I put my card in and nothing happens. And I stand there and then it says, I have to literally press a button that says pay by card. Inserting my card does not tell it that I want to pay by card. So this just drives me absolutely mad. And what really kills me about it is they don't let you check out with a human being anymore. They make you go down this path. So this for me is a bad user experience. And let's analyse what's happening here. So what am I experiencing? I've got a barrier to achievement here. What I'm trying to do by my shopping, there's a barrier to that, and it's this machine. So I'm feeling frustration. That frustration quickly turns to anger. There's a certain level of confusion. That credit card moment is always confusing. I feel like I'm wasting my time. This is not faster than going to a human. That's a really important thing. This does not save time, even though it's supposed to. And it's kind of repetitive as well, going through these same steps, scanning. So these, to me, are the kind of a definition almost, or a working definition of bad user experience. And I think you can apply those terms to websites you may have used, apps you may have interacted with. I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to mention any specific apps related to conferences. I only joke. So this is a bad user experience. So why does bad user experience happen? Because user experience is designed. Like the experience I went through with that checkout, that is a designed experience. Someone has thought about that and designed it to work a certain way. So this is how bad UX happens. Somebody identifies a problem that they want to solve. And in this case, the problem Tesco want to solve is get people checked out faster. Although that's the problem they say they're trying to solve, get people checked out faster. You then conceptualize a solution to that problem, self-service checkout, brilliant, get rid of the queues, that's going to work. So someone designs it, and then they build it, and then they put it into stores. And bad UX happens when you essentially follow those 5 steps without at any moment checking whether you should be doing what you say you're doing. Without any moment pivoting or changing direction or testing with users and doing this kind of thing. I guarantee if Tesco had tested that machine with even a handful of customers, do you honestly think they would have launched it like that? I just cannot imagine they did any extensive testing. Very important here as well, the idea of identifying problems. The problem Tesco say they're trying to solve with that is getting people through the shop faster. The problem they're really trying to solve with that is staff cost. And that's the other reason it doesn't work. They're trying to they come up with a solution to a different problem. So actually it does solve a problem for them. They need fewer people working in their shops. So all these things, all these kind of the way bad user experience feels, we talked about these things, barriers to achievement, frustration, anger, confusion, time wasting, repetition. How many of you have ever seen any of these in your classroom from students? I hate to say it, but this almost feels like a working definition of a bad education experience or a bad learning experience. And I feel like for many students, this sadly is what learning English feels like a lot of the time. Not all the time, and I'm sure everyone in this room is an exception in their own classrooms. And I think actually these things are particularly pertinent in a lot of online learning. I think it's much worse. If any of you have spent any time in Moodle, you'll recognise every single one of these things. So you can kind of see why this happens in education as well. Let's map course design and syllabus design onto that same framework. Oh, sorry, before I go on. We talk about user experience. I think we can actually shift the term here and start talking about learner experience instead, this idea of LX instead of UX. So why does bad learner experience happen? You identify a problem. You could call those identifying needs, learning needs. You conceptualize a solution to that problem. Those are your learning outcomes. You design it, so a syllabus that would deliver those learning outcomes. You build it, that's your materials creation. And then you launch it, which is you delivering your course. And again, if you just follow those 5 steps in a linear line, if you basically look at it like a train that you get on and you can't get off, you probably will deliver a bad learning experience. And that applies to a physical classroom, an online course, teacher training, an app, anything like that. So basically, I think some of the times, especially with online delivery, we make the same mistakes that Tesco made with their checkout hardware, and I don't think we should be doing that. So, what does good UX look like? Any Heinz ketchup fans in the room? How could you not be? Actually, I don't like it. Although I like it a lot more in that delivery mechanism than I like it in the glass bottle. The glass bottle of Heinz is your classic bad user experience. You can't get to the product. You can't access the product. It's a barrier to achievement. So Heinz very famously redesigned their packaging. So the product experience of using Heinz ketchup in plastic is far, far superior. So good UX, our definition at ELT Jam of a good user experience is this. It's a little bit wordy, but I think it gets the idea across. When the features of a system, product or service combine to enable a user to achieve a goal frictionlessly with accompanying delight. So basically, you can achieve your goal with very, very few problems or barriers, and you feel great doing it, essentially. How many of you have ever used Citymapper app? Only a few of you. Okay. Wherever you live, download that if it works in your city. It is by far the best navigation app on the market. It's completely free. It will map your journey from any 2 points in a city and give you public transport options, walking options, all these different things. It's incredibly intuitive. It works incredibly well. And it's got this little element of delight to it, which I think is part of the user experience, the whole user experience thing. So for example, I live in Madrid. If I map my house to Atocha station in Madrid and tell it I want to walk, it'll say it's 2 kilometers, 28 minutes, 2% of my daily intake of calories, or 0.2 of a calamari sandwich. Which, as some of you might know, is the kind of iconic Madrid snack, essentially. It's the doner kebab of Madrid. So a little touch like that. So now when I load Citymapper up, I look forward to it telling me what food item I can eat a little bit of if I walk this particular journey. Another thing it sometimes does, it will say walk for 2 kilometers or teleport. And I'll just suggest that I teleport there instead. There's little things like that I think are nice little touches. So good user experience, this is what you want to be feeling. Some sense of delight, satisfaction, calmness, happiness, and most importantly, achievement. Doesn't this look much more like we'd like our classrooms to look, and our online courses to look, and our apps to look instead? Because, and this is going to sound super cheesy, but learning should be a joy. It should be a delight. It should be a wonderful experience. I've got a 13-month-old son, and I'm watching him learn stuff now, and the pure pleasure he takes from learning a new skill, and literally it's like putting a block on another block. But he has so much satisfaction, he claps to himself. And I always wonder, when does that stop? At what point do you sort of go, oh, learning's rubbish. I hate learning, I don't like doing it anymore. Because it seems to happen at some point. We lose that sort of childlike enjoyment. So I wonder if, by looking at how user experience is designed, we could figure out how to inject a bit more joy and a bit more delight into our classrooms. So, here are 6 things that user experience designers do that educators can do as well. So just 6 tips really, 6 things from the world of user experience design that hopefully you can all apply to either your classroom teaching, your online course delivery, any digital learning products you're working on, anything like that. I'm hoping this will be quite universal in appeal. So, first thing, user experience designers understand their users deeply. This is the kind of founding concept really of user experience design. It's in the name. You have to deeply understand the people who are going to be using your product or service. And there's a very simple framework that user experience designers use. It's kind of a 4-step framework to kind of figure this out. So they decide on an outcome, and their outcome usually is, what they want to achieve, basically, what their kind of objective is with this product or service. They then create user personas. This is quite an important concept. We're going to talk about this in a second, who are kind of sketches of a typical user of that product or service. They then decide features of that product or service that might help those users solve a problem or do something. And then they finally create and test hypotheses around those features. So would this feature help this user achieve this outcome? Question mark. That becomes the kind of experimentation at the beginning of user experience design. Let's map this to learning. You can do a very similar thing. Decide a learning outcome, create some learner personas, so some kind of sketches of the kind of learners you want to appeal to, decide on what course features might reach that learning outcome, but then test that first. Find a way of testing that first before you literally create your entire course and write your entire syllabus and create all of your materials. This works if you're designing an online course. You can just create personas. If you're teaching physical human beings, you could literally make this your needs analysis. And the next couple of steps could form part of a new way of doing needs analysis, I think. So the one I want to focus in on firstly here is the learner personas. This is the most important one, I think. So how do we create learner personas? These are supposed to be archetypes. If you can't speak to any of your actual learners, these are kind of archetypes that represent the kind of people that you're going to be using your course. But like I said, if you've got actual learners, sit down and talk to them. And what you kind of want to do is create a little profile that might look something like this. So this is Laura. Laura does not exist. Well, someone who looks like this clearly exists, but this is a stock photo. So Laura is from Madrid, she's 26, single, and she's working full-time as a graphic designer. So this represents the kind of learner in my group, a typical learner in my group. And then what you want to do is you want to try and complete these sentences for Laura. So she wants to learn English because of this. Her biggest problem is that this happens. For Laura, it sucks that things are this way. Or it's a pain that things are this way. What Laura really needs is a way to do this. And what would really help Laura is this. And this starts to get under the skin of what you can do to help this particular learner. What your course might need to look like, what content you might need to cover, that kind of thing. And what I can imagine doing, and basically what we do at ELT Jam when we're making a product, is we have these personas kind of drawn up. And you're supposed to, and we're not very good at this, you're supposed to pin them up around the office so that you can constantly look at them and refer back to them. And as a teacher, you could find, if you're designing an online course, you could create little personas and put them around your desk. So when you're writing activities, when you're thinking about stuff, think, okay, well, is this going to be suitable for Laura? Will it solve her problems? Will it work for her? I'm going to come back to this in 2 seconds, but the second point, the second thing that good UX designers do that ties into this is they ask very powerful questions of their users. When they speak to users, they really dive into deep motivation and that kind of thing. Questions are a hugely important element of design. They're the lifeblood of great design, according to this. A well-placed question uncovers insights and provokes new ways of looking at the world. Now, we all ask questions as part of needs analysis, right? But what kind of questions do you ask? What do you need English for? How much time do you spend emailing? What kind of people do you have to email? What books have you used in the past? That kind of thing. I think we tend to ask fairly superficial questions. Here are a few, and I can send this slide around, by the way, afterwards if anyone contacts me, because there's quite a few on here. Here are a few more powerful questions that we could ask our learners and that could inform our learning experience design. Where do you feel stuck? It's quite a nice question. I can imagine, when I was learning a language, I could be like, would it be a grammar point? Would it be pronunciation? That's quite a nice way of getting into some difficulties. What makes you angry or frustrated? Learners feel angry and frustrated. What's behind that? What's causing it? If you had an extra hour in the day, how would you spend it? Learners are time pressed. So what would they do with their learning if they had extra time? What wears you out? Grammar exercises, maybe. Like online homework. Figure out, because basically, if anything you're doing in your course is knackering your students, it's probably not a good thing. What things do you find yourself complaining about? That's interesting. I wonder how many of your students go home and complain to their partners, their colleagues about something that happened in class. What are they complaining about? What behaviours need to happen in order for your learning to be successful? So do you need to be spending more time reading? Should you be watching more films? Should you be keeping a vocabulary notebook? This kind of thing. What do you wish someone else would do for you? That's interesting, isn't it? Because that sort of digs into sort of something that they wish would happen, but are not making happen themselves. If your coursework were magic, what would it do? Or your app were magic, or if Moodle were magic, what would it do? I think that could uncover some quite interesting questions. And what achievements are you most proud of? This is an important one. Dive in a little bit to what your students have achieved in the past that they feel great about, and see if you can tap into that in any way with your course design. So a few powerful questions there, I think that, again, could form part of your needs analysis. One other really useful technique related to questions is this, and this is one of my favourite things in the entire world, the 5 whys, and using the 5 whys as a technique to really dive into intrinsic motivation in learners. So this is a very simple technique. You just ask 5 questions in a row beginning with why. So let's take a first question that we might ask Laura, our learner from Madrid. Why does Laura want to learn English? So she can get a better job. What should our next why question be? Why does she want a better job? So that she can earn more money? Why does she want to earn more money? She wants to rent her own flat. Why does she want to rent her own flat? She wants her own space. Why does she want her own space? She wants to be able to choose when to be with people or not. What this does is it dives down into a kind of emotional core of why somebody wants to do something. And in Laura's case, English means independence and freedom for her. That's why she's coming to class. That's why she wants to learn. And if you understand this, you can help her better. I think that's a very, very powerful thing, understanding our students to that level. And this is what good user experience designers do as well. So we've had understand users deeply. We've had ask powerful questions. What else do user experience designers do? They understand behaviour change. Most digital products that you get, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it might be, they want you to do certain behaviours. So let's take Facebook as an example. What does Facebook want you to do? Share. And Facebook's entire user experience is built up around the idea of encouraging you to share. And they understand that, and everything about the product is designed to encourage that behaviour. There was a blog post that we ran on the ELT Jam a couple of years ago now, I think, that Scott Thornby wrote, which was about how second language acquisition principles could be applied to the world of educational technology. And he listed sort of 10 things we know about second language acquisition, and sort of mapped these things to the way EdTech products needed to work. And one of these, I think, really exemplifies this idea of behaviour change. So what he did was he would take a piece of literature, a piece of research on SLA, and map it to a feature of a product. So he took this one from Munoz. All things being equal, the more time and the more intensive the time spent learning and using the language, the better. So this is a kind of well understood, accepted principle of second language acquisition. Scott takes this and says, is the software sufficiently engaging and motivating to increase the likelihood of sustained and repeated use? So from a behaviour perspective, we need to figure out how to make our learners use our products or use our online course or whatever it is sustained and repeatedly, or come to class in a sustained and repeated manner. That's behaviour change. And this idea of behaviour change is talked about a lot in the user experience design community. This is Lakshma. She writes a lot about great stuff related to user experience. And she talks here about how, when done right, digital products, they have this kind of power to promote and reinforce positive long-term habits. So I think as educators, it's not just about thinking what content are we going to give our students? What are they going to read? Or what skills are we going to cover? But I think we could also start thinking about what behaviour do we want our learners to carry out. So the question becomes, don't just think about what you want your students to learn, think about how you want them to behave in order to learn. Do you want them to read more, to practice more, to go and make friends in English, to travel, to do all these different things? Think about behaviour and then think about ways of facilitating that behaviour if you can. Final couple of points. Good user experience designers solicit constant feedback on their work. If Tesco had solicited constant feedback on their checkout machine, that experience would look very, very different. So I'm going to say something quite bold here, I think, and I hope you don't disagree with me. Post-course feedback is basically irrelevant. If you send out a survey after your course is finished, online or in person, you've basically lived in a bubble for the whole of your course with no real input from your learners. So I'm a big fan of constant solicitation of feedback, even weekly, or even after each class. Quick measure of how good that class was. If you want to do this, there's a really simple technique. It's called a Net Promoter Score, NPS, a Net Promoter Score. It's one question you can ask somebody that is a fantastic measure of how happy they are with the service or the product they're using. And the question is this. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely is it that you would recommend your current course to a friend or colleague? So if you're teaching right now, you can ask that question to your entire class. And the way you analyse the results on that scale of 0 to 10, anyone that scores you 9 or 10 is known as a promoter. Anyone who scores 7 or 8 is neutral. And anyone that scores 0 to 6 is a detractor. Promoters are people that would literally go out and recommend you to other people. They would say, my teacher is amazing, you need to sign up. Or this online course I'm doing is absolutely amazing, sign up. These are the people that write reviews on Amazon, the positive reviews. Anyone who scores you 0 to 6 is a detractor. They would literally go out of their way to dissuade someone from taking your course, or coming to your school, or being taught by you. So as you can imagine, if you're getting 0 to 6s, you're in a bad state at that point. You need to do something about that. Your Net Promoter Score is the percentage of total respondents who are promoters minus the percentage who are detractors. And that gives you literally just a figure, a metric that you can work on. And the target number, if you're delivering an absolutely amazing learner experience, 80% is your target. That is incredibly hard to get. But in a lot of product development at the moment, the startups, if your product is not getting this, it's likely your business will fail. It's that good an indicator of how well things are going. So if you're running a school or running online courses and you're scoring much less than 80, you probably need to think about why and find out and ask why. And if things are going badly, you want to do the next thing that designers do, is they constantly iterate. This is the opposite of getting on the train and letting it take you to its destination. This is getting on the train and getting off at every stop you need to, and maybe changing lines, or maybe getting on a bus, or maybe walking for a little while. And this idea of iteration, look at this bad UX design process we talked about. This is sometimes known in the product development world as waterfall product development. You start at the top and it drips down. And you can't run back up a waterfall. So basically, once you've started, you keep going down. This, I think, is not the way we should be designing our courses or our learning products. It should look more like this. This is the build, measure, learn cycle. You build something, you measure its impact, you learn from that, and then you complete the whole circuit again and again. This is what's known as iterative development, sometimes known as agile development or lean, applying lean principles to development. This is how good software is built. This is also, I think, how good classrooms could be organised and how good online courses could be built as well. So how might we iterate in the classroom or in our online course? I think we need to embrace emergence. If things come up that are important, we need to go with it. And also, I think we should be assessing continuously. Again, if your only assessment of your whole course is at the end, it's too late at that point. If people haven't learned what they need to by that point, we failed them. And that's kind of our fault, not their fault. So the idea of continuous assessment and emergence, as things come up, we change direction. We swing around, we do different things as need be. I don't think we should plan and write our whole courses at the start. I really don't. I mean, maybe some schools make us do that. And maybe online courses, you feel better if you've done it. But if you do this, the chances that you will iterate and change are absolutely minimal because you've done too much work. You've committed too much. It can make people feel nervous writing the course as it plays out. But my God, how much better will it be if we do it that way? And if it's not working, change it. This is the key takeaway. In the startup world, there's a concept known as the pivot, which is when you panic and realize that your product idea, your amazing startup, is absolutely not working. And at that point, you pivot or perish. That's the terminology, pivot or perish. In the classroom, we shouldn't be perishing. Final point. Get to the aha moment quickly. This is what designers, good user experience designers do. The aha moment in product terminology is the instant a user understands the value of a product or service. It's the minute you get it, you're like, oh, right, Facebook, I get it. I understand how this works. In user experience design, getting users to the aha moment fast is usually the sign of whether a product will succeed or not. Let's take, how many Twitter users do we have in the room? Well, okay, that's good, quite a lot. Twitter's self-proclaimed aha moment is 30 followers. If a Twitter user follows 30 people, if they get to that point, they will probably be a Twitter user forever. Because they've reached the aha moment, they get how it works. And 30 seems to be the amount they need to reach, to get it, to understand it. With Facebook, it's connecting with 7 friends in 10 days. If you join Facebook and you connect with 7 people in a 10-day window, you will probably become an active user of Facebook. That's what it takes for you to go, aha, that's how it works. Learning is full of aha moments. And what I think we need to do to mimic this is figure out what your learners value in their learning. Like really deeply, what they value, what are they going to see that's going to make them be like, right, I understand why we're doing this. I understand why we're doing this text or this activity. I think the key to that is relevance. And I think we need to establish the relevance of everything early and often. Whenever I talk to other language teachers who are learning languages, the thing they most often complain about is none of the stuff feels relevant to why I'm learning. And that's basically your learner not getting to the aha moment at all. And that's a bad, bad thing. So that pretty much brings us to the end. 6 ideas there, 6 things that I think we could take away with, and that might help us start to create better learning experiences, and hopefully just avoid, I think, could we call it the Tesco checkout phenomenon? Maybe start to do that. We've got about 2 or 3 minutes left if anybody would like to ask any questions or comment or disagree with anything that I've said. Hugh, don't stand up. Any questions or comments? Anything anyone would like to ask? I never know if that's... Oh yes, one question for you. Johnny.
Just one thing, I mean, we have to actually try something quite similar with our course. One of the difficulties behind this course book design is that the end users are the learners, but then there's a kind of unique role of the teacher delivering the course book, and it's quite hard to design something for the learners when actually you're not in control of that delivery.
That's a really good point. So this is, if any of you work in ELT publishing or you just use course books, for example, you may be aware of this issue that we've always had, which is that with a course book, your users are, you've got 2 users basically, a teacher and a student, and neither of them is your customer, very often. Well, they kind of are, but they're not. So you've got a Ministry of Education that chooses and buys a book that a teacher then uses to deliver a course to some students. So when you try and analyse that from a user experience perspective, it's really challenging. So I think what most publishers do is try and tread a kind of line in between somehow. My feeling with that, personally, is that the student's book is about the student. That's the end user. And if you want to design something for the teacher, you've got a teacher's book. So my personal feeling is design the student's book for the student, design the teacher's book for the teacher, and let the teacher figure out how to interact with that student's book based on that. But no, it's a really good point, Johnny. I think that's a very difficult one to solve. Any other questions? Yes, at the back.
I actually teach user experience design.
Oh, excellent. Was that all wrong, everything I just said?
The only thing that I always have in my classes is they're used to asking for what they need in class.
Yeah.
But I can't always deliver, and it seems to decrease their motivation to
Why can't you deliver? What's the obstacle to being able to deliver?
Well, either you can't find the materials, or they're asking for a type of experience that you don't have time for in a class of 2 hours a week. So it's just difficult to fit what they need into the curriculum.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's probably quite a common problem. But to be honest, if that's not possible, then in a way they maybe need to go somewhere else. No offence at all, but it may be that if they can't get what they need in this particular context, then maybe they need to go to a different one. And I think trying to pretend that we can help students do something that we can't is not a great thing either. That's going to lead to a bad experience and some bad motivation and all those kind of things as well. It's one more question, then I think we're going to have to stop.
Just to follow on from that, I was just wondering if it would be reasonable to suggest that other UX students, I'm thinking of people I know who are working
Oh, that's nice.
Speakers are not native speakers or international speakers.
A nice UX multilingual group. Yeah, I like that idea.
Now for 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yes, one final thing.
I would like to recommend a book actually.
Yes, please do.
It's not only related to everything you've said.
Okay,
It's Matt Watkinson's
Yeah.
The 10 Principles Behind Great Customer Experience.
there you go. The great principle behind.
Every teacher should read this.
Okay, excellent. So what's it called again? The great principles, 10 great principles behind great customer experience. Excellent, thank you for the recommendation. Right, final thing, another little plug for this, Innovate ELT Conference in Barcelona, palm trees, sunshine, fun times, please come along. Thank you very much for coming, cheers.